Jordan Rains here with the IDP 411 podcast. Just want to tell you guys today about our sponsor of the show, expandtheboxscore.com. Expandtheboxscore.com has premium NFL and college football stats. They're adaptable, they're affordable, there's all kinds of great stuff on there from the NFL to college football. It's great for people that are in the Devy leagues looking to get that edge over their league mates. So go check out expandtheboxscore.com, proud sponsor of the show. And now, without further ado, on to the IDP 411.
What's up? This is Jared with my co-host Jordan Rains and our guest Mike Woelertt with Mic'd Up. What's up, fellas? How are you doing?
Good. Good morning.
What's up, everybody? Good morning.
Ready to break down the AFC West, finish up our AFC divisional preview series here. We have a really special guest, Mike, with us from his new pod, Mic'd Up, and also from 4 for 4. How you doing, Mike?
Doing all right. Little morning talk here. Some IDP morning talk with some coffee, and my new episode of Mic'd Up just went up, so I break down the NFC West. So appreciate you having me, and ready to roll with the AFC West.
Nice. Yep. Well, before we get started, happy Father's Day to any guys out there who happen to be fathers. Happy Father's Day to you, Jared. I know you're a father. Are you a dad, Mike?
I am. 2 boys.
Awesome. Well, happy Father's Day,
buddy.
Yep, my day started with some socks and a Deathly Hallows piece that my wife got me for Father's Day, which is really cool. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. So, and now I have coffee in my dad mug. Best dad in the world. And now I get to do what I really love, talk about fantasy football and IDP. So let's just go ahead and jump into this division. The Chargers, let's start there. This is a pretty IDP-rich team, a little top-heavy maybe, but they're, if you get some of these top-end guys on this team, you're looking at potential top 5, easily top 10 for especially the D-line when you're talking about Bosa, defensive backs, when you're talking about Derwin James. But let's go ahead and start with the cream of the crop. Let's talk about with Joey Bosa here. Since 2017, 29.5 sacks, 36 tackles for a loss, 160 combined tackles. That number kind of floored me when I first saw it all together, especially considering he's missed some games. And 61 quarterback hits. What are your guys' thoughts on Joey Bosa? I mean, top 3, top 5? We'll throw it to you first, Mike, and then Jared, what are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for sure, I have him in my tier 1 defensive line just because of he just provides a consistent pressure rate. You mentioned the sacks, and you know what? He's a multi-dimensional player, so you're not just relying on him for sacks. I mean, last season, 66 tackles, and that's an 8% rate. And he has a really solid, as far as points per play, I mean, he's right around 0.2 points per snap. So you don't necessarily have to worry about going weeks without sacks. He's still going to get, probably double-digit points on a given week because of what he does up the middle. So for me, definitely top tier. I've got him right, with Hunter, Garrett, and his brother. So he's been pretty healthy over the last couple of years, so I'm not really concerned about injuries anymore. But yeah, I have no problem with Bosa this year.
Nice. Jared, what are your thoughts? Top 3, top 5, and where would you take him in a draft compared to some of the other
doubt,
top guys?
I'm ranked number 2.
Yeah,
very good.
I don't think it's that hard. I think he's as good as they come. I have him as my number 2. As for the injury concern, I'm a little against you on this one. You got thinking he only played 7 games 2017, so I'll stick to my guns on the Bosas tend to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Or 18, yeah. So in 17 he had his Pro Bowl year, and then so literally just 2 years ago he only played 7 games.
Yeah,
this doesn't change the fact that he's still my number 2 guy behind Daniil Hunter, because 61 quarterback hits, lately is pretty ridiculous. And I mean, he's pretty consistent. He's a 20 plus, 21, 9, and then 31 last year.
Yeah.
Now, we're not talking numbers like J.J. Watt had 55 one year. So, but he's as good as they come when you really, really look at him. He's good for double-digit sacks.
Mm-hmm.
He's, 10 and a half, 12 and a half, 5 and a half, and 11 and a half. So, and he gets a forced fumble here and there. He got 4 in 2017, which is awesome. And you get to really see that aspect. Like I said, in 2019, he's right up there. He's top 10, in sack leaders. I just love in the aspect that he can be all that you want him to be. And if you're a defensive line guy, which we are, we love the aspect of drafting them early and often before you get super into linebackers. But I like drafting big linebacker names too because they're sell high guys. So
yeah,
Joey Bosa is real, man. He's my favorite. He's actually my favorite guy on the defensive line for them.
Nice.
And the good thing with Bosa is when you look
probably in this entire division. Well,
yeah, and when you look at Bosa, especially when you look at his sacks or his tackle numbers, he's getting solo tackles. So he's has almost a 3-to-1 solo to assist ratio. So he's getting to the tackle ahead of anybody else. So he's not sharing tackles. So he's not like, for every solo he's getting an assist. He's clearly getting to the ball carrier. When he sees it, he's getting to the carrier. So which I think is just as important as the total tackle numbers. But yeah, he's providing, he's getting a solo tackle for almost every assist that he gets. So he's certainly maximizing those points.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you guys. For me, he is right now in redraft. I have him as my number 4 guy.
Mm-hmm.
I have him behind Nick, Danielle Hunter, Myles Garrett.
Yep.
I don't have a lot of beef with him. He's a great player, but I do have a little beef with the fact that in 4 years, he only has 1 pass deflection on his record. An IDP 1-2-3, that's a 3-point play. And when you have guys like Cameron Jordan, when you have guys like Carlos Dunlap, even Myles Garrett, that are getting you 2-3 extra pass deflections a year. And when you get into Cameron Jordan and Carlos Dunlap, guys like that, you're getting 7, 8, 9 a year. And Joey Bosa has 1 through 5 seasons. Those are points, at the end of the day. And I like guys that have a diverse skill set. That's why he's a little bit below even his brother Nick. Nick was only in the league 1 season. He's already doubled his pass deflections. He's got 2, and he had 2 in the postseason. So in 1 year, he has 4 pass deflections, which is 3 more than his brother has in 4 years. So that's one of my only knocks on Joey Bosa. We're just splitting hairs, as they say, I guess, if you have to, decide. So that's why he's a little lower for me than Jared said he had him. But again, he's in that top tier for sure because he's a guy you can count on for big tackle for loss numbers. He's a guy you can count on for big solo tackle numbers, which at the position is, always great to have a good baseline there. And he had 31 quarterback hits this last year, which was the most he's had in his career, so trending up. Any last thoughts about Joey Bosa before we talk about his buddy? What do you guys think about Melvin Ingram coming into this next year? Anyone?
In terms of
Ingram, I like Melvin Ingram personally.
I've always liked Ingram, but I think he is the more boomer bust guy. Just because he can go more stretches. Because I think half of his production last season came in about 3 games, and then you see his game log and there's a lot of blanks. So you would think playing alongside someone like, Joey, he would get to the quarterback more, but it just doesn't seem to be the case. But I think with Linval Joseph maybe in town, I know he's a guy that can kind of plug things up. I like Ingram's value, though. I think he's being drafted as the 25th defensive lineman off the board. So I like the value. But no, I think you're getting more of a boomer bust player than anything. But I still think he's still a really good player. I think his pressure rate is still within double digits. So I think he's fine. I'm more comfortable with him as a second or a third DL than maybe anchoring my defensive line around him.
Agreed. Jared? What do you think about him this year?
I like him. The good thing is he's got a great motor. if I like guys that don't take plays off, and he's one of them. So he's probably my biggest aspect in the aspect he doesn't take a play off, and that's why he's there. I mean, that's and I think with Bosa having, continually playing really well, they have to focus on him. So it just makes Melvin Ingram, especially a guy that you can get way later. And honestly, some people don't even think about him. So you can draft him real late in a league, unless you're listening to this and then people start going after him. So, that's just one of those things. I like him. I really do like Melvin Ingram.
Yeah. I've got him as my 28th guy right now this season in redraft. Maybe that's a little low. I was just talking about pass deflections. Listen to his pass deflections since 2016. 5, 1, 3, 5. So that's like 15x what Joey Bosa is doing on the other side. So even though he doesn't have the double-digit sacks a couple of these years, he's making up for it because, he's getting these pass deflections, and he is getting points in other ways. So you're right, Mike. He is a little more boomer bust. He does have some low-scoring games, but he can have a big week where he goes off for, 25, 30, 40 points. And when those weeks happen, you better hope he's in your lineup. So let's any other thoughts on this defensive line before we move on? Guys, what do you guys think about they drafted Tillery last year. They brought in Joseph. Any quick comments on those guys before we move on to the linebacker group?
I've got a little bit of interest in Linval Joseph.
I would love to see Tillery move up.
Yeah, but just something I haven't seen too much out of Tillery yet to really go gaga for him.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I like Linval Joseph. I'll be honest with you. I mean, he's consistent, so not bad idea.
That was definitely a good addition for them as a unit. I think nobody's going to contest that. So let's move to those linebackers. Let's talk about Kenneth Murray. We were talking a little bit about him before we came on to the show or before we started recording. They moved up, traded up to get him. They need linebacker help. Jared, you're an Oklahoma guy. Jared could probably tell you everything about Kenneth Murray since he's about 10 years old. But tackle monster. He plays fast. He hits hard. Sideline to sideline speed is there. He ran an incredibly fast 40 at the combine. I think he ran the same speed as Patrick Queen, but he's like 20, 30 pounds heavier. What are your thoughts? What's the upside of a guy like this? Jared, we'll start with you since you got a little more of the Oklahoma in you, and then we'll defer to Mike, and then we'll talk about the other guys that are kind of hanging around there at linebacker.
I mean, what's not to love about Kenneth Murray? Off the field, phenomenal kid. He's got such a great story in the aspect of how he's raised people. I mean, if you just want to look up his story, that's pretty amazing to me. If you look at the other aspect of on the field, great leader. Everybody talks about how great of a leader he is, how much he loves just being a person. So if you look at his stats from last year, and we just pulled it up, 102 tackles, 17 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 4 pass deflections. That was his second best year at Oklahoma. His best year was his sophomore season, in which he had 12.5 tackles for loss. He also had 17. So he's had 36.5 tackles for loss, 325 tackles over 3 years in college, 176 solo tackles, 9.5 sacks. He had 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, and 6 pass deflections overall, including 4 and 2 his last 2 years. What's not to like about the kid? He went 36 his freshman year where he didn't play a whole lot. 71 solo tackles his sophomore year and 69 solo tackles in his junior year, and played every game. What do you say about the guy? I mean, he's as good as they come. Actually, he only played he left 2 games early, including he actually left during the play LSU, which I would definitely tell you hurt them. I mean, they were going to get blown out anyway. Defensive starters out for the game, but he's as good as they come in. He's my LB1. It's not even close to me. We had this little argument before the show on who our LB01 was going to be. because of the addition to Linval Joseph, you have Melvin Ingram, you have Joey Bosa in front of you. They finally have a linebacker that can come downhill, get at somebody with really good closing speed, and who stays on the field. And that's Kenneth Murray. And I think he's as good as they come. I really do. I think he might even blow out some numbers from last year from the two rookies that. And I love Devin Bush and Devin White. I am infatuated with him, but Kenneth Murray could be as good or better.
Yeah,
I mean he's a specimen. You seen that dude with his shirt off?
No.
Do you need a minute?
That's all I have.
What are your thoughts, Mike? Where you got?
Yeah, I mean,
also have his jersey. I mean, we're just.
Yeah, I mean, there's, he said it all. I mean, in terms of workload, I mean, he appeared in over 800 snaps in each of his 3 seasons. So he's durable, good frame, good speed. Almost his movement is almost reminiscent, in my view, of like a really quick safety. He can get to the quarterback. I guess these are very minor concerns, and I think these are correctable. He just needs to square up on some tackles, make plays in coverage. I think he had 13 or more missed tackles in each of his 3 seasons. So as long as he can cut that down, that's correctable, I think, for someone like him. But he has the talent to be a 3-down linebacker, especially if he plays on the weak side. And if the Chargers and Bradley realize, hey, we have a really good football player, we need to keep him on the field. As long as he doesn't get messed with, he has for sure an LB1 ceiling with his tackle rate. Thomas Davis, left a big hole on the weak side. I mean, he vacates 110 tackles. So really good makeup of a weak side linebacker, but he'll probably be aligned everywhere on that defense. So as long as he can get on the field for 800 to 900 snaps, I mean, he can easily eclipse the 100 tackle mark in his rookie year. But he for sure has an LB1 ceiling.
Nice. I agree. LB1 ceiling is definitely in the cards. He's I have him ranked in redraft right now at 23, sandwiched between Rashaan Evans and Jerome Baker at the moment. And I think he could blow the doors off some people. So I have him a little bit ahead of Wilson and Patrick Queen and guys like that, but that's just me. What do we think about the rest of these guys? Drew Tranquill, because you're white, Perryman, or is there any IDP interest at this point? Or is this one of those things where we're just going to watch, wait, and make our moves, week 2, week 3? Anybody?
I've been...
Okay, I have Drew Tranquill in my top 200. I will tell you that. I have White in my top 200, but... I'll be honest with you, they're probably on most waiver wires. The guys to have is Kenneth Murray. The guys to have are Melvin Ingram, Linval Joseph, and Joey Bosa. And then on the backside, obviously, there's the dog. So even though they have King. So I don't know, man. I'm not massive. I mean, they're definitely an LB3, White and Tranquill. So
yeah. I think they're going to have
LB3, LB4,
where you can slide them in, and they're going to get better than 0, which is always better than 0. So I'll take that. I think Tranquill's got a little bit of upside, but what are your thoughts, Mike, before we head to the back end of this defense?
Yeah, and some of the things I've been reading, they're still considering Perriman as a middle, but I don't know why. I think the Chargers, some of the guys like his physical play, but that leads to him being off the field. Upside, I'd rather take a chance on Tranquill. I think Kazir White is probably going to play more of that left side, that Sam side, so he could come off in sub packages. So I don't really have much interest in Kazir White, but like you, it's just Murray. And if somebody emerges, I might draft Tranquill as kind of a back end late round draft guy in redraft, just to kind of see what happens. And you know what, if nothing emerges, if he's your like 6th or 7th linebacker, you could just cut bait and move on and not really have to worry about it. But in terms of like an actual draft, like in draft, it's Kenneth Murray and then maybe Tranquill to kind of round things out. It's just one of those things. I don't know if this group warrants having 2 guys at the same position on your roster. So it's for me it's Murray, and then everybody else is just down a bunch of pegs.
Fair. All right, well, let's head to the back end of this defense. Let's talk about Derwin James. All right. I'm going to go ahead and kind of give my little bit on Derwin James before we get going. Let you guys kind of look at it. But this is the guy, he came in his rookie year, 2018, had 105 combined tackles, 13 pass deflections, 3 interceptions, 3.5 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, and he made first team All-Pro. And he finished in IDP 1-2-3 scoring. Derwin James into the season with 273 points. That was in 18. Jamal Adams that same season had 307 points. Now, I said something yesterday. Our buddy Z-Mags IDP from IDP Guys put up a poll yesterday, and it was basically asking, who would you want of these safety? Who's the safety you guys are keeping? And he put Budda Baker, Derwin James, and Jamal Adams on this list. And it blows my mind that I'm looking at it right now. 47% of people took Derwin James and 30% of people took Jamal Adams. Now, I get the Derwin James hype is real. I mean, he looks good in that uniform, that powder blue. He's got a cool visor. I mean, he hits hard. He's got that stuff going for him. But he scored 273 points, like I said, his big year. That would have made him in 2019, if you just take that exact same season, those exact same points, he would have been defensive back 4. But he only would have scored 2 more points than Jamal Adams did in 2019. And Jamal Adams played 14 games. So even at his absolute peak right now, he still has only beat Jamal Adams once last year if you go point for point in a full season. But Jamal Adams didn't even play a full 16. So to me, I mean, I get it. People like Derwin James, but I think it's kind of silly, even borderline foolish to rank him ahead of Jamal Adams when he just hasn't done it yet. I love him. I mean, I'm not trying to dog on him, but I think that I don't understand why people are coming off of Jamal Adams, maybe is where I'm going with this. But Derwin James right now for me in Dynasty, I think he's my DB 2, 3, 4. He's one of those, and I know he's my DB 4 in redraft right now. I know some people probably don't like that, but that's Jamal Adams is just the way he gets things done everywhere, and the fact that he's had 2 seasons already that have beat Derwin James his best season. And if you extrapolate, his full season last year out over 16 games, Jamal Adams, he still goes over 300 again, something that Derwin James has not done yet. So that's my bit on him. I mean, he's top 5 for sure. I'm going to double check my rankings just so I know exactly for sure where I stand on him for people. I'm looking right now at Fantasy Pros. I got him at DB4. I have Jamal Adams, Budda Baker, Landon Collins, and Derwin James. That's what I have currently right now. But what are your thoughts? Let's jump to Mike, and then we'll jump to Jared. But what are your thoughts on Jamal Adams? And then what are your thoughts on Jamal Adams or Derwin James compared to Jamal Adams?
I guess one I'm afraid of his situation heading into the season. You don't like to hear trade talk. Anytime you hear trade talk, it should kind of perk your ears a little bit, because if he does get traded to another team, is he going to be utilized the same way? Is he going to be asked to rush the passer? Is he going to be asked to do the same things? You want to think yes, because that's what he does. He's a versatile player. So I think I still like you. I still have him ranked number 1, but I think a lot, like I said, you just don't know the situation. You don't know how he's going to be used. And last season, he was a sack machine for a safety. His tackles were down, but still was a monster. I mean, I'm like you. I've got Derwin 4. He's still a tier 1 defensive back. On a per play basis, he's I'd say a borderline elite. I mean, he's right around 0.2 points per snap, which is a very good rate for a defensive back. And again, with the situation that he's in, with really the lack of real linebacker talent around him, he's going to be asked again to do a lot of everything. So I think he's going to resume his into the box role. And I think hopefully he's fully healthy. He should be fully healthy. But like he's still top 4. I mean, you're talking about probably, a difference between 3 to 4 points per game between some of the other guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Jared? I mean, Jamal Adams, to me, like I just said, is still number one. I've seen some people have Derwin at one. Do you think it's a little premature, or what are your thoughts? I mean, I know you. I mean, and that's not to knock him. I mean, he first team All Pro as a rookie that's good. I mean, I don't want to go against that, but I'm just saying when the numbers stack up, he still hasn't done it the way Jamal Adams has done it. But what are your thoughts?
Okay, I'll agree with you on the aspect that, but look at the time on the field. You know, we're talking about the San Diego Chargers. You know, they can sustain drives. I mean, that's something that they've always done. And Jamal Adams is going to stay. You know, going to get his points because, well, when was the last time you remember the Jets being good and sustaining a drive? I mean, can they stay on the field and be that? No, Jamal Adams gets more opportunity. So I agree with that. Now, here's why I even like Derwin James even more, because we don't even know who the starting quarterback on the Chargers is going to be. Let's just be real here, right? Is it going to be Tyrod Taylor? Is it going to be Herbert? I mean, young quarterbacks, who knows what's going to happen? So Derwin James, he's more than top 5 for me. Okay. I have him ahead of Landon Collins because I don't know which Landon Collins I'm going to get. Okay. That's my biggest thing. And you know me, I'm a floor guy, a huge floor guy. Derwin James over his last 5 games, right? And only played 6 and he played, you know, went in my fantasy league, MFL, he went 8, 17, 15, 17, 16. Mm-hmm. So you have a floor of 16 with him, the way I look at it, when he came back. And you have a ceiling of 30 plus. He's number 3 for me. And in Dynasty, he might be number 2 or number 1.
Fair.
Just because he's young. I mean, he's super young. And he's as good. And people want to say this all they want. He's, for me, who he really reminds me of is probably the greatest defensive back of our era, you know, just in the last couple of years, and Charles Woodson. So if they really wanted to, Derwin James could play both ways. That's how athletic he is. And I truly believe that.
Fair.
So.
All right. Well, any thoughts on any?
That's just where I am. I love him too.
Yeah, I've just looked. I got him at 4 in Dynasty and redraft. Do you guys want to touch on these other defensive backs before we move to the Broncos?
I'm good moving on to the Broncos.
All right.
Let's
do it. Let's move to the Denver Broncos. Let's start talking about Bradley Chubb. Came into the league 2 years ago as a rookie. Had a highly productive season as a rookie. Hurt himself last year. Let's see. His rookie season, he had 12 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 pass deflection, 60 combined tackles, 14 tackles for loss, and 21 quarterback hits. That's from the linebacker position technically, but we play on Sleeper, so he is DL eligible on Sleeper. So we're talking about him in that group of guys right now. What are your guys' thoughts on him coming back from this injury? He played 4 games last year, got hurt in the 4th. So but
they're looking at points from last year or points per game averages from last year. Chubb's probably not going to appear just because of his limited games. So you can almost get him at a discount and take advantage of your leagues. I mean, your league mates. I mean, before the injury, when you look at his points per snap rate, he was 0.24 points per snap. And his best game came in week 4. So you could kind of tell he had that trajectory up until his injury. So I think definitely take advantage of his discount, especially now that you no longer have to worry about him being a linebacker and taking up a linebacker spot. But yeah, I mean, his points per snap rate well above 0.20, which is really what I want to see.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Jared? Coming off this injury, you think he's going to put one area, 12, 11, 10? Where would you put Bradley Chubb compared to him? Both guys have only had 1 full season under their belt. Both had very good, rookie years. One's got a lot of more draft capital than the other. But what are your thoughts on Bradley Chubb?
So here's my thing is, I'm huge, like you just said, on Maxx Crosby. And Bradley Chubb's upside. I mean, any person who has 60 tackles
Mm-hmm.
12 sacks. I mean, how do you love that in a rookie season? And maybe people just didn't know what they were getting, when he came back and he was hurt in 4 games, like you said. But he's good for a pass. He always gets a force fumble. I mean, he had a force fumble last year in 4 games. So he only had 1 sack in those 4 games. But if you talk about that, when you're focusing on somebody because Von Miller being who he is, as long as Von Miller's there, Bradley Chubb is a must-have. Now, I think Von Miller is definitely on the downside of his career, without a doubt. I mean, whether you can argue with me or not, it's just a thing. Mm-hmm. They've got the biggest reason why I'm not sold on Bradley Chubb is because of who they got rid of. I understand they got Gerald Casey, but they got Wolf has been a staple on the defensive line. And to get rid of him, I think hurts Bradley Chubb more than anything. So, yes, great upside, but you have to look at the aspect of who they've lost. I mean, he had 41 solo tackles as a rookie.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. If he can come close to matching his rookie numbers, then he's a DL1. I mean, that's just what it is. But do I think it happens? I don't know. I mean, he had 16 solo tackles in his last year, being injured. So if you look at that you can't gripe about it. I mean,
yeah,
I guess that's he has the potential to be a DL1. I think he's going to be a DL2, a DL3 though.
Fair. Yeah, and I think with the injury, you have to be a little cautiously optimistic but cautiously. So yeah, that's kind of where my thoughts are as well with you guys. I think that the ceiling is there. I want to see what his floor looks like this next year coming off that injury. But I have been buying the discount, so, and I'm sure you guys have as well. So, any other thoughts on the Jarrell Casey edition?
He's averaging 4 solo tackles a game, though.
Yeah, I mean that's a big deal. But we could move into this linebacker group. We can go to probably my favorite bread and butter tackler in the whole NFL, Todd Davis. Just 134 tackles, and you wouldn't even notice it last year. Playing next to Alexander Johnson, another guy who's kind of a late breakout. But this is the second year in a row that Todd Davis has eclipsed 100 tackles, almost 80 solos, 78 this year. He had 80 the year before on less overall tackles. Doesn't do a lot in the tackle for loss department. I mean, 6 isn't bad. I mean, that's a little better than I guess I just gave him credit for, but nothing like Luke Kuechly a couple of years ago when he had that monster year. He's a very much a bread and butter kind of guy. He had 7 pass deflections in 18, but only 1 this last year. But what are your guys' thoughts on Todd Davis? And while we're at it, let's just talk about Alexander Johnson too. Like, what are you guys' thoughts on these linebackers? Where would you draft them? What would you expect out of them, etc.? I'll just throw it to Mike first and then circle back to Jared, and then we'll go to the defensive backs.
Yeah, I mean, Davis, he's boring, but obviously effective tackle machine. And you know what? Sometimes boring is fine. And you can plug him into your lineup and you know what you're getting, at least for this season. I don't see him being displaced. I think he's in his final year. Provides a really high tackle rate. I think last year it was about 15%. So in terms of redraft, I'll draft him. I'll take the boring name, get LB1 stats and draft him as my 3rd or 4th linebacker and just continue to enjoy the production. As far as Alexander Johnson, yeah, late career breakout. I think those 2 guys are going to be the 3 down guys. I think Johnson may be more of a redraft guy as opposed to dynasty, because I think Justin Sternad is going to be involved sooner rather than later. Maybe not this year, but for sure next year. And for him, I think he's going to have a little bit more upside than some of the other guys. So I think he might have more of a special teams role. I think he might see some snaps, but I think his 2021 is probably where he'll shine, especially with Davis coming off potentially not being re-signed and being a free agent. So I do like AJ and Davis in redraft. Like I said, I think those are going to be your 3 down guys. So that's kind of my quick thoughts on those 2.
Yeah. Jared?
You guys say late career Alexander Johnson. Isn't he only in his third year?
He's only been in the league a short time, but he's like 27.
I'm the person that told you
he's 27 or 28, I think.
Yeah, he's in his late 20s.
Yeah, he's only been in the league a short time, but
he's 28.
So I guess early.
Can't we say the same thing about Todd Davis?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, he's been in the league a little longer. He's been in the league when he was 22. He just hasn't really done anything until recently. Well, I mean, he had 90 sacks. 100.
I mean, they're both 28.
Yeah.
They're both the exact same age.
What are your thoughts on him?
One's got more experience than that.
Yeah.
I mean
Todd Davis
you got to love the aspect that Todd Davis the last 2 years had 114 tackles. You know, Todd Davis had 114 tackles, 134 tackles the last 2 years. But again, he's the one guy that's been in the league a lot longer. I mean, they both, you know, I get that they're both older, 28, but you probably still got 2 or 3 years out of them. You know, if you're saying that you're going to hold Todd Davis, you got to hold Alexander Johnson. That they believe in him apparently because, dude, how many players do you know are come in the league at 20, 26 and start in an NFL? I mean, just doesn't happen. So I don't know. I like Johnson's, let's be real, last 2 years, Todd Davis finally broke the 100 tackle mark, and he was an afterthought before then. I mean, and he's been with Denver since 2014. So I don't know. I love Todd Davis, and like you said, he's like Matt Milano.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to talk about it, he's boring, but he gets tackles.
Ain't nothing boring about Matt Milano. Get out of here.
I like both in redraft.
Matt Milano's a beast. Slander.
I mean, if you just said Todd Davis is boring, I mean, how is Matt Milano not the same thing?
I don't know. Matt Milano is a little.
I mean, honestly, I'm asking you.
I mean, I think Matt Milano does more in the coverage area. He's very, very good at diagnosing plays. He gets behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, he just missed on a couple of sacks this last year. 7 tackles for loss, 12 tackles for loss, 7 tackles for loss the last 3 years. I mean, that 1 year he only started 5 games. That's more than, Todd Davis had. So, I mean, he's getting points in other places besides just tackles. He hasn't had those big tackle numbers yet. But anyway, let's move on from these guys. Let's not get bogged down in one of the most boring linebacker groups in the NFL. Let's see who's next. Oh, let's talk about Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson. What are your guys' thoughts on these guys? Justin Simmons in 2018 ended up, let's see here, defensive backs. He ended up number 7. He did a lot of that on the back of some pass deflections. He had a lot of good solo tackles, but he did have a lot of pass deflections this last year. I know early last year, I was more on Kareem Jackson than him. But as the year progressed, you just kind of saw Simmons just kept getting it done over and over and over again. So what are your guys' thoughts on him this year? You think he's going to be able to put up another top 10 season? And if so, what do you think that's going to look like? Let's go to Mike and then we'll circle to Jared.
I just think with the nature of the DB position, it's just such a volatile position. Someone could be a seventh overall, and the next year they fall off. But as long as Simmons maintains that same role, he's in a role that allows for IDP production. I mean, he had a virtual 50-50 split at free safety and strong safety. He made a play on the ball 40% of his targets, and like you said, that led to a lot of pass deflection. So, and I think he had 3 or 4 picks. So he's a ball hawk whenever he's targeted. So he's going, and in your scoring, those pass deflections are huge. So in terms of Simmons, I don't mind him as my second DB, especially for those bigger plays. So I'd certainly like him over Kareem Jackson.
Yeah. I know Jackson got in some legal trouble last year, but apparently he served his suspensions or whatever at the end of last season, so he should be right back on the field this year, just in case anybody's wondering about that.
Mm-hmm.
But Jared, what are your thoughts on Justin Simmons? I know you were big on him last year. I know you liked having him, and you got him pretty cheap in a couple of spots, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I got him cheap in quite a few spots. He flies under the radar, and I don't know if maybe people just aren't Denver fans or what that people have been playing with. But when you're talking to a guy whose last 2 years had 97 and 93 tackles, plus, he had 2 interceptions the year before, or last year. So, to get what you can get out of a guy, and then you see those type of production, he reminds me a lot of Tremaine Edmonds, where he gets a lot of tackles, but he has a big playability too, which makes you like him. As for Kareem Jackson, never been really high on him. He's finally in a role where he's playing safety, but they moved him around a lot last year too. It's been long-standing career at Houston. I think he'd be better suited as safety. He's got high tackle numbers when he was a cornerback. But if you want me to pick one of the two, it's not even close to me. In the city he's been playing, I would rather have the younger guy, Justin Simmons, who's already had more tackles than Kareem Jackson's. Kareem Jackson's career high was 87 tackles. And then I understand that he's played corner most of his career, with playing 71. Having 71 tackles last year in 13 games is pretty awesome. But I would rather have Justin Simmons in his 16 games years.
Yeah.
He's just very, very solid player, a very good tackler, as you see on the video. So,
yeah,
I'm a fan. Huge fan of him.
I like
a guy
him.
who's been in top 10 last 2 years. Can't wrap it up.
Yeah, I like the fact that he does get the high pass deflection numbers. He's good in coverage.
What do you got?
He grades out really good on PFF. He doesn't just like Mike said. He is moving back and forth from strong to free safety. So there will be people out there that are like, oh, he's just okay because he doesn't do all of his time in the box. That's an opinion, but you can get points places on the field that aren't in the box. So I like Justin Simmons, and I think he's one of those guys too where you'll see people take a Minkah Fitzpatrick, or you'll see people take who's just another good, like not Eddie Jackson. 2 years ago, you probably would have saw somebody take Eddie Jackson over him. But he's a guy that he does slip through the cracks, and I don't necessarily want him as my DB1 because maybe his floor isn't as safe, but because he is able to get it done all over the place, I would feel comfortable with him as my DB1 if I were to punt the position a little bit. So that's kind of my thoughts on him. And Kareem Jackson, he's going to be one of those guys. He'll have weeks where, he'll probably be in my top 24, and he'll have weeks where he probably won't be, and he'll have weeks where he'll probably make me look good, and he'll have weeks where he'll probably make me look like I have no idea what I'm doing. So that's just the nature of the beast. That's what we do here. So any thoughts or comments on the cornerbacks here? I know they've lost Talib and Harris last couple of years. They added AJ Bouye. They added, was it Callahan or something like that when they're slot guys? But I'm not overly interested in any of these guys. But if you guys want to speak on them at all, get it in now. But if not, let's move to the Chiefies.
Real quick, just one guy to keep an eye on in your cornerback premium is probably going to be Devontae Bosby, just because he's coming off of a neck injury. I think opposing quarterbacks could end up targeting him with AJ Bouye on the other side. So just one name to keep an eye on is Bosby, but we can move on.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's move to my Chiefies. I'm rocking my Patrick Mahomes jersey today for anybody that's watching on the YouTube. Repping the red. Let's talk about the big guy. Let's talk about Chris Jones. Defensive tackle, but not just the defensive tackle. This is probably one of the most versatile interior defensive linemen in the league. It's him, it's Aaron Donald, and to me, it's DeForest Buckner. These guys can do everything. They get pass deflections, they force fumbles, they get sacks. The one thing that I will say that's a little bit of a knock on Chris Jones compared to these other guys I'm naming off is his tackle numbers. Chris Jones has never gone over 40 tackles in a year, and DeForest Buckner averages right around 65. So when you're talking floor, safe floors, you're probably going to want to go elsewhere. But when you're talking ceiling, I mean, you got a 15.5 sack season under his belt, 9 sacks last year in 12 games started. His tackles for loss, he had 19 and 18 in 2018. But I mean, just look here. Since 2018, 24.5 sacks, 27 tackles for loss, 9 pass deflections. That's 2 years. Remember, Joey Bosa only has 1. 3 forced fumbles, 49 quarterback hits, 76 combined tackles in the last 2 years. He's a beast, and I've been getting him on sleeper. He's, DL, so we don't have to draft DT. I've been taking him as a DL2, and sometimes in some of my leagues, I have him as a DL1. I'm going to be putting him against guys like Nick Bosa. I'm going to be putting him against guys like Joey Bosa, Myles Garrett, and I feel comfortable in knowing that his floor is, right around 20 quarterback hits, right around 15 tackles for loss, and to know that he's got double-digit sack upside, even though his tackles are lower than a lot of other defensive linemen, I'm comfortable with him. But what are your guys' thoughts on Chris Jones? And there's also this whole thing with his, he wants a contract, and he has not gotten it. So we'll go Mike, and then we'll circle right back around to Jared on Chris Jones. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I think last year could have been one of those years where Jones did eclipse the 40 tackle mark just because he missed 3 games. But yeah, I mean, when you're talking about a guy who, especially from the defensive tackle position, which isn't really known for sacks. I mean, when you look at his numbers, I mean, you said it, he's a very versatile player. 5 tools. He's going to get you defensive pass defensed. He's going to get sacks. He's going to get those forced fumbles. He only was in on 58% of the snaps, but like I said, he missed, I think, 4 games last year. I think it was 3 games. I'm sorry. But again, points per snap, you look at his points per snap, and he's right up there with some of the best defensive ends, defensive linemen. So he's one of those few guys where you don't necessarily need to separate. Yeah, I'm going to take this guy only defensive tackle premium. I'm not touching him defensive line general. He's one of those guys that you can draft if you're in a contract year guys. He's turning 26, so I mean he's right entering the prime of his career. So
one by any means, any person who only has 30, like you said, his ceiling is 40 tackles. All right, he's 28, 32, 40, and 36. He went from defensive end to defensive tackle. He had 23 solos last year, which is weird. He was a Pro Bowl selection last year, and he wasn't the year before, but the year before he had more solos, he had more combined tackles, and he had 7.5 more sacks, which is 6.5 more sacks. But he did make the Pro Bowl in 2018, which was weird. That's interesting to me. I don't know. I like him. Do not get me wrong. And he had 9 more quarterback hits the year before as well. I don't have him as deal 1. I mean, you look at different things, and yeah, he has a good floor, and I like good floors, but I don't have him as a deal 1. I might even have him as a deal 3, to be honest with you.
I think his ceiling, though, I think he does
but
have
like
a deal 1 ceiling, though. I mean, if you look at his 2018 season, 0.20 points per snap. So I think the ceiling is there. This year, I agree. I'm not taking him as my first defensive lineman. No, but yeah, as far as this year, yeah, I agree with you. Second or third.
Interesting.
He's a monster, though. Let's not get this twisted. I'm going to do 6'6", 310. I mean, he's scary.
Let's take a look at this. I mean, he played. Well, I'm going to come back just a little. Not a lot, just a little. He played 13 games last year, and he still finished as DL 30. Mm-hmm. So that is in the DL. That is in the DL3 range. That's where you had him, but that's in 13 games. So let's just have a little fun. Let's give him 3 more games, and let's give him 15 points a game, just for
okay,
fun. Let's add 45
okay, well, then I'm going to counter you. Where are you going to put Maxx? What's Maxx Crosby? Maxx Crosby only played 10 games.
Started 10 games. He played all 16.
Or he started 10 games. Okay, well, 11 games.
Yeah, he still had a bit. I mean, I'm with you. But if you give him those points, if you give Chris Jones a full season, he is up there in that 12 to 15 range pretty comfortably. With guys like Nick Bosa who had 216 points, guys like DeForest Buckner who had 210, Yannick Ngakoue 220. Chris Jones had 170 and missed 3 more games. I mean, even if you give him 5 points each one of those games, he's still going to put himself up there into the almost top 24 just like that. And I don't think he's putting up 5-point games in IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring. So it's because of the bigger things he does. It is because of the tackle for loss. It is because of the pass deflections. He still had 4 pass deflections in 13 games. I mean, that's 4 more than Joey Bosa's had his whole career. I mean, I'm just going to keep circling back to that. So when you can get points in other ways besides just a tackle floor, it's harder. It takes a little imagination, but you can get these guys up there. And I think Chris Jones is a little bit slept on. But again, it's just because he's got that DT stigma to him, and people are like, well, I don't want to put a DT in my top 10 because what will everyone think of me? So anyway, let's move on to a guy who is a DE who put up less points than Chris Jones and played in 14 games. Let's talk about Frank Clark. What are your guys' thoughts on Frank Clark? I had high hopes for him coming in last year. I don't want to say he disappointed me, but he definitely disappointed me until the postseason. He didn't do hardly jack shit for my IDP teams that I drafted him on as a DL1. In the postseason, though, in all those leagues I did that were in the playoffs, I ran him out there a lot, and he did a lot in the postseason. So I will give him credit for that. He did help the Chiefs win a Super Bowl, which, give him credit for that. He and Daniel Sorensen and Tyrann Mathieu pretty much, I mean, they were the heart and soul of our defense down the stretch and all the way through the Super Bowl. But what do you guys think? I see a better season from him this year. I think part of it was the move. Part of it was getting comfortable. Part of it was missing Chris Jones for some time. So maybe he had a little bit more people on him. But what do you guys think about Frank Clark this next year? You think he's going to maybe hit some of those numbers we hoped he would hit last year? And we'll just start with Mike, and we'll circle back around Jared.
Yeah, with Clark, I think he's just more of a one-dimensional player. At least that's what he's showing to me. Decent tackle numbers, not off the board. When you look at your passive defense, which he's had at least 2 in each of his 3 of his last 4 seasons. So when you look at his sack numbers with Seattle, 3, 10, 9, 13, and then with Kansas City last year, 8. So I think he's more of a big play type of scoring format because, his floor, at least in one of my scoring systems last year, his floor last year was 2. So points per snap are relatively low. He had a good, strong finish to the season. He had sacks in 3 of his last 4. But when you look at tackles and when you look at big plays, no forced fumbles, no interceptions, 1 defended pass, 4 tackles, 2 tackles, 1, 2. So at least for me, he's certainly not something I'm going to anchor my defensive line around. I think I'm more looking at him as a second or a third defensive lineman. He's still getting a double-digit pressure rate, which is good. That's what you want to see. It's between 11 to 12%. He's going to need to pick up his game big time because he and Chris Jones are probably going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting on the pass rush because they did lose Emmanuel Ogbah, who had a pretty okay season after really being a jag in Cleveland. So they utilized him a little bit better than what Cleveland did. But Clark, I think, is more of a big play scoring format. I don't know how he rates well in your scoring system. I'd imagine it's probably a little lower than some of the other guys just because, the lack of multiple double, the lack of consistent double-digit sacks and the lack of some of the other numbers that you're hoping out of a defensive lineman.
Yeah, he did not reach the top 36. Number 36 in IDP 1, 2, 3 came in as DeMarcus Lawrence at 162 points. I don't know exactly where Frank Clark came in. It can't be too far behind that. But Jared, what do you think about Frank Clark? You have holding out hope for him this season. You think he's going to do a little bit better, or what are your thoughts? And do you have him in any leagues, or are you targeting him as a buy low guy maybe because he's coming off of the lower year? Ooh, let me see. I think his mic's muted.
Sorry, I was muted. Pull the list back up. You're wrong. He's actually on the list. Yeah.
Oh shit, you're right. He's at 27.
He's number 27.
Well, damn.
So if you think Chris Jones is better, you're wrong. Look at the stats. Frank Clark had a better year, same amount of time he had.
Chris Jones played less games. Chris Jones did miss a couple of games.
They both played 11, didn't they?
I'm looking at it right now.
They both started 11 games.
Frank Clark Frank Clark had 725 total snaps. I think Jones was below the 600 snap mark because of the games that he missed.
There you go.
They both started 11 games, though.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think
they both played 14
volume.
Games.
They both had Clark had more volume. I mean, honestly,
okay, but I mean, if we're saying he had a down year and he scored 184 points, I mean, you have to look in the aspect he had 37 combined tackles, 27 solo tackles. He had 12 tackles which I believe is his best year he's had. He never broke 11.
You're right.
11, 10, and 12. So at his best tackle for last year, his lowest amount of games started. He only played 14 games. He turned it on at the end like you want him to. In his first time, he hasn't played 16 games or at least 15 games. Here's the facts: is Frank Clark's, and even though you say he had a down year, he had a better year than Chris Jones, and they just paid Clark a ton of money, and that's why Chris Jones isn't getting paid right now, because Frank Clark got paid. So I'm going to tell you right now, and you love it or hate it, Frank Clark goes over 200 points this year. Mark it down. Call it good.
Woo-wee. Called a shot.
I promise you.
And I'm not going to disagree with you because you're right. I did not see Frank Clark there, and you make some good points. The point differential is not very big. Frank Clark did have the best tackle for a loss season of his career. I think if you can trot both these boys out there for 15 games, I think they're both going to be comfortably, in that top 25. Neither of them went to 25 this year, but I think, like you said, comfortably in that 200-ish point range, given, what they have produced and what they've shown on the field. They get their points in different ways a little bit, but I think that maybe I didn't give them enough credit to open up this segment on them. So we're coming close to an hour here.
People hating on him, and I hated on him.
No, you're right. Hey, good call.
I hated him on before.
Let's talk about these linebackers. We have another rookie in this division, another guy who could be an early producer given the situation. We're talking about Willie Gay, who got added to the Chiefs this year. He was their second round pick, I believe, second or third.
Third round.
Third. What do you guys think about him as a ceiling? I mean, this is a team that has had some tackle guys the last couple of years, but nobody really that you're going out to try to get for your IDP team. Does Gay change that? Start with Mike, circle back up to Jared.
Yeah, I think with Willie Gay, I think he has a first round talent, but I think his character concerns are what befell him. I like the landing spot for Gay because there is talent and there's leadership, and he can attach himself to someone like Tyrann Mathieu, who went through some similar issues and can kind of provide him a kind of that mentorship to kind of keep him on a really good path, so he doesn't have to deal or doesn't have to worry about some of those off the field issues that he dealt with when he was at State or Mississippi State. So when I watched some of his highlights and when I watched some of his plays, you could tell that he was a really good football player. You could almost tell that he was probably the best player on the field. He played, it's a very small sample size. He appeared in just 177 snaps last year, but he had 40 tackles, 5 sacks over 13 games in 2018. So you can tell that he can play. I think already, and it just this speaks to the nature of the Kansas City linebacker room. I think he's already the best linebacker and even coverage linebacker on the team. So I think that's going to allow him to be on the field. I think he is in line for a 3-down role. In terms of Anthony Hitchens, O'Day, and any of the other also-rans that are on that team, I'm off of those guys really, even in redraft. And I'll take Willie Gay in redraft as a 5th or a 6th linebacker and take the potential upside to fill out a roster.
Nice. What do you think, Jared?
So I got Willie Gay late in the draft and was stoked about it because I mean athletically he's really, really talented. ESPN put out a video of him recently on where they thought he could play, and they expect him to play outside at first, do the athletic building, but he moves Hitchens right out of the water. No problem there. They probably got I think that last year Montez Sweat was the biggest steal of the draft in the aspect that, he fell because of a heart murmur. This one, he fell because of off-field issues and a limited playing time is that. But he, without a doubt, has been bad coached with phenomenal athletic ability. He's a top-tier talent. Everybody talks about how good a talent he is. They love his work ethic. So I think that he is going to move into, without a doubt, a guy you're going to have to grab deep and you can keep for a long time. And as of right now, I really like him.
Nice.
So.
Good. As a Chiefs fan, I like to hear that our team's getting better. So I know Joey the Tooth from IDP Guys is a big fan of his as well. And he is one of those guys that in your rookie drafts, he's your 4th, 5th, 6th linebacker off the board, in round 4, 5, 6. So if you're missing on Isaiah Simmons, Patrick Queen, the hype pieces, I mean, you can get a Logan Wilson or you can get a Willie Gay a couple rounds later, and you might have a guy that is going neck for neck and might even outpace them. So let's move to – there's no other real linebackers we want to talk about, right? I mean, I'm not interested in anybody else there. All right, great. Glad we're all in agreement there. Let's talk about my man, Tyrann Mathieu, all right? This is a safety. He finished – what did he finish last year? An IDP 1-2-3 scoring. I'll have to pull it up in a second. But 2019, 75 combined tackles, 12 pass deflections, 4 interceptions, 2 sacks, and 3 tackles for loss. This is a guy who's played – it's his 3rd straight season with 16 games. Early in his career, he had a little injury trouble. He just couldn't stay on the field the whole time. He had 13 games, 14, 10. But since his last season in Arizona, 16, Houston 16, and the Chiefs 16. So that seems to be behind him. He gets it done all over the field. He's got 2 sacks this last year, 3 sacks the year before, a sack the year before, a sack the year before, a sack the year before. Pass deflections. He had his 2nd most pass deflections of his career this year with 12. So he's getting you points kind of all over the place. He finished in IDP 1-2-3 scoring with 226 points, right between Antoine Bethea and Jesse Bates. That put him at DB 14. He's one of those guys, to me, he just keeps getting better and better. And he is 27 now, so he really is entering his prime. The guy I just mentioned above him, Bethea, an elder statesman at the defensive back position, but a guy that shows you that you can be a productive IDP defensive back late into your career. And if you really think about it, Tyrann Mathieu very well could be entering his sweet spot this year, next year, and the year after. I love that he's on the Chiefs. I love that he gets a couple of tackles for loss every year. I love that he gets pass deflections, 4 interceptions, 2nd most interceptions of his career there as well. He's a guy that I'm excited for this next year. He's an awesome. I always say Minkah Fitzpatrick and Tyrann Mathieu are my 2 kind of favorite DB2 targets, just because, they're guys that get it done in different ways than your top end guys like your Buda Baker or your Landon Collins, who are kind of more predicated on your tackle floors. What do you guys think about Tyrann Mathieu, coming into his own onto the Chiefs as a leader? And what do you think about him coming up this year? We'll go ahead and start with Mike.
I mean, I love the aspect that he's played 16 games, three straight years, which he didn't do that in 4 years at Arizona. But 3 straight years, doing that, I mean, I think that his floor is pretty solid. I mean, you're talking 70, 80 tackles, which is awesome. Solo tackles the last 3 years, 70, 70, 63.
Yeah,
That's
buddy.
pretty nice. Tackles for loss, 3, 5, and 6. I mean, 2017 was if you really look at it, a really solid year for him. Not as good as his 2015 year, which he was a complete savage. His 15 year. Kids, you're getting 2 or 3 out of him a year, which is pretty nice. You're getting a couple sacks. Last 3 years, you've gotten 6 sacks out of him. So, and then pass deflections this year has been pretty solid. You had 4, 2, 2, 1, 5, 1, 2. I mean, he's been consistent. And if I want to take a player, and you know me, I like floor guys, to get a guy who's a floor guy and be a top 14 guy, I think he could easily be in the top 12, especially with Logan Ryan and Eric Reed not knowing what's going on with them. You just look at small stuff like that. I don't know what Von Bell's going to do. You know what I mean? I'm a Von Bell fan. Marlon Humphrey overstayed his bounds last year and had, arguably his best year of his career fantasy football wise. So I'm going to have to move Marlon Humphrey down out of the top 12, to be honest with you, from this year, without a doubt.
Yeah. What are your thoughts,
That's
Mike?
just where I believe, and that's where I think it's going to happen.
Yeah. What do you think about him this year, Mike?
Yeah, I think when you look at his games appeared, I think you also have to look at volume. I mean, he has been in over 1,000 snaps in 3 straight seasons, so he's got the volume. So like every other player, you need to be on the field in order to produce. So not only does he have the snap volume, but he was targeted 80 times last year, made a play on the ball nearly 20% of the time. So he's not, I think his ceiling in terms of tackles have been right around 89. But when you look at his numbers, he's been a pretty consistent top 30 guy. So a DB2. So, which, when I looked at his tackle numbers, I was about to say, I was kind of writing up, I think he's overrated. You know what? No, maybe we don't rate him enough. Maybe we do overrate tackles in this instance, but yeah, volume is key. He's been on the field over 1,000 snaps. And that's kind of what you want. They know how to use him in the defense, and he's, again, just a really good football player. Multiples, 3 sacks in 18, 2 sacks last year. Like I said, 12 defended passes, 4 picks. So he knows where to go with the ball. He knows where the ball's going. He's going to get to the ball. He's one of those see ball, get ball. Can play in the slot, can play the strong role, can play free, can play over, can play everywhere. And that's really the trends with the safeties now. There's not, they're being used everywhere. You only have a very few guys that are strictly either a free safety or a box safety. The trend with safeties is that, along with the defense, a lot of these teams are playing 3, sometimes 4 safeties, and they need to play everywhere. And Matthews is just one of those guys.
Yep. Agreed. Do it all. Safety, maybe a little bit underrated, but he's got a ring now, so I'm happy for him. He's on the Chiefs, so I'm happy about that. So, just quick, Juan Thornhill went down late in the season with an ACL injury. That's a 9-month recovery. He's probably not going to start the season. They did draft a guy this year kind of late. I forget who it was, if in all honesty. But right now for me, it's Honey Badger. He's the only defensive back I'm truly interested in a cornerback specific league. I mean, we did West. Was it Charkandrick West? Was it? No, he's a running back. What am I thinking of?
Tre'Davious, yeah.
That's the one. He had a couple of big games last year. We were on him a little bit there in the middle of the season. He was a little
Ward.
That's it, Ward. So he was productive. So, but that's all that, the defensive back, the only guy you're really going to want and really going to be trying to get is Tyrann Mathieu. And when you get him, you're going to feel good about it, because he's going to come up with some big plays for you. So we're over an hour and 10 minutes. Let's get to this final team. Let's get to the Raiders. Let's talk about these guys real quick, and then we will, kind of chit chat and then close the show out. But let's talk about Maxx Crosby. Rookie last year, 4th round pick, but the most productive rookie as far as sacks. He had 10 last year. I think Josh Allen had, was it 9.5? And then Joey Bosa had 9. A lot of them, he had 4 in that one game, but he had that breakout game. What was that, week 6, 7? He had a monster game. And I remember actually, Jared, I was listening to some clips of our old shows last night. And the week before, we had commented because he and Clelin Ferrell had not been productive, but they had been ruffling on Thursday Night Football the week before. They'd been ruffling some feathers, but they had not landed the sacks. And I remember we had talked and we said, there's something going on here. This might be the week. And then that was the next week. He had that big blow-up game. 4 forced fumbles, 4 pass deflections, 10 sacks, 47 totals, 16 tackles for loss, and 14 quarterback hits. As a rookie, 4th-round selection. If you got Maxx Crosby last year, you got him at a price that no one will ever get him for again. You probably got him on waivers. You probably got him as a throw-along. The investment to get Maxx Crosby was minimal, and the return for Maxx Crosby, he was a little boomer bust, but it was big. See that? What are your guys' thoughts on upside this year? You think he has a better season than last year? I mean, that would be something. But we'll go Mike first, and then Jared. I know you're a huge Crosby fan, so we'll go with you at the end because I'm sure you got a lot to say.
You may not. Yeah, you might not. And just looking at some MFL ADP, but you look in your league, if someone needs a defensive end, I would throw him out as trade bait and capitalize and sell high and see what you can get. Like I said, his value I don't think is going to be higher, but I like him, but I'm not as I'm not
sold.
Sold.
What are you not sold on? Just out of curiosity, just play devil's advocate. Like, what's missing in the puzzle here?
I don't. It's
not one particular.
A return on keep them. I mean, obviously, you probably got them for free or on a waiver, and you know what? If you can get guys like that, those are the guys you might want to try to ride into the sunset, which is fine. But I need to see it again before.
You're in
before I'm in. Yeah.
And before Jared goes real quick, if Maxx Crosby would have been a top 40 pick and had the exact same season, do you think that you would be saying all the things you just said?
Oh, for sure. No, you know what? It comes back to his draft capital. If he was drafted where Clelin Ferrell was drafted, or if he was drafted among the top 40, I mean, I'd probably, it would be, it's that I guess I'm guilty of the draft bias, if you will.
No.
When it comes,
and we all are. I just wondered, because I mean, when you look at his season side by side compared to, I call them the big three, Josh Allen and Nick Bosa. I mean, Crosby was, we're looking at it right now. He finished the highest of the group, and that was as a guy who didn't even get to start until week 10 or week 4. So I think that there's, the narrative, which I've heard, you're not the first person to weave that story. I think if people are selling this, I mean, you're not going to get him as cheap as you did last year, but I mean, like you said, his value might be as high as it ever is. You still might be getting a bargain.
And I think when we get into it, and I think, we're obviously going to come down, I know there's another guy, but I might as well just say, I mean, he paid 750 snaps and they brought in Carl Nassib. So
Maxx Crosby were drafted at the exact same time. Who's your defensive rookie of the year last year?
I'd probably still take Bosa just because of in my opinion, I think he had a little bit more impact on the game. I mean, he had over 100 pressures, so I'd still take Bosa.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we got one guy who had more solos, more combined tackles, more quarterback hits, and more tackles for loss, but you're going to take Nick Bosa over Maxx Crosby.
Yeah.
Did he have more? Let's see here.
The fact of the matter is this: if he was drafted the exact same time, I mean, if you look at it, quarterback hits, he won in quarterback hits, but tackles for loss, solos, and combined tackles, he lost. And honestly, if it wasn't for the playoffs, there's no way I take Nick Bosa over him. He was still fresh in people's minds. If you look at it, that's why he won the Defensive Rookie of the Year. And I'm not talking about fantasy football here. I'm thinking my guy got robbed. I'm a Mad Max fan. He was without a doubt the steal of the draft last year to get in the 4th round.
I don't disagree.
Are you talking about?
I don't disagree with you at all whatsoever. I'm giving, and that's just how I look at things, and I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. And like we said in chat, we have our guys, and
I love it.
That's he's your guy. That's great.
So here's another thing is I'm bringing in. You talk about Shaq Barrett. Shaq Barrett didn't become somebody until the Ndamukong Suh got there. Thanks for my man Steve to throw that out there, but I was going to say it anyway. Shaq Barrett didn't become something because of Ndamukong Suh. Aaron Donald had his best year with Suh next to him. Maxx Crosby had nobody and did what he did.
Yeah, that's it.
Nobody.
That's a good point.
So you're bringing Carl Nassib. Carl Nassib is going to take Clean Farrell's spot before he takes Maxx Crosby's spot.
Ooh,
so they're already talking about signing Maxx Crosby a long year deal. He's your guy. Just look at it. I mean, the facts, Mad Max has shot up draft boards, and you are not going to get him for what you got him before. Yeah. Shaq Barrett got what he got because of Ndamukong Suh. Maxx Crosby got what he got because he got heart.
Yeah. To play devil's advocate before you guys start hitting each other, there is something to be said for the flip. I understand the idea of you didn't pay shit for Maxx Crosby, so to sell him at an all-time high, that's a W in and of itself. Maybe he's not on your team anymore, but if we're talking as a value, as an asset, that's a move I'm okay with. I think that Maxx Crosby is gonna, you say his value is as high as it ever is. I still think if he does it again, it'll never, this is as low as it's ever gonna be. So you're playing with a little bit of fire here with Maxx Crosby. It's, do I sell early because or do I believe? And it's a matter of conviction. So we'll move on because we all have our opinions. I like Maxx Crosby. I still think that he's a guy that's going to pan out. He proved that he could at least do it last year, and I think he'll get the opportunities. But let's move on down this list. Clelin Ferrell, we kind of touched on him. 4th overall pick, 5th overall pick. Tackle numbers were okay. Pressure numbers were all right. But we're talking IDP fantasy football. The reality is he'll score more points this year than he did last year. At least I hope so. Jeez, if he goes back.
Jeez, you can't get it.
Yeah, we got some big problems if he can't at least make us take a step forward. So I think we could end up with a situation where Maxx Crosby and Clelin Ferrell, if they both kind of boom, they could play off of each other in a similar style that Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram play off of each other, where they're both going to be valuable, useful commodities. I like Carl Nassib coming in as well because even though he's not a high-level player, it's somebody breathing down your neck that has played this game in this league for a while compared to these two. And if John Gruden likes to do anything, it's, getting guys' heads and kind of be like, hey, you're good, but check out this dude I got over here. He's better, and it didn't cost me a damn thing. Like, John Gruden is the kind of guy to say stuff like that to get the best out of his players. And he will, I think, I think that, Nassib addition was by design. I think it is kind of to force these two edge guys to iron sharpen iron, kind of play off of each other. So do you guys have any comments about those two before we move on to these linebackers? Because they have a good linebacking core, and then we're going to, close out the show. We've been going a while. Appreciate the IDP Army for hanging in there with us. So any thoughts on Nassib and Ferrell before we slide? Anybody?
I already said my piece. Nassib came in for Ferrell to push. So
there you go.
That's just what I believe.
Maxx
Crosby is the truth. Just deal with it.
Maxx the Truth Crosby. What are your thoughts, Mike? Anything on those two guys?
Nah, not really. Ferrell only had 1 double-digit fantasy game, so he's got a lot to prove this year.
He's got a lot of room for improvement. All right, let's talk about Corey Littleton. Now, this is another guy. I hope Jared doesn't get his blood pressure all worked up. He's a big Corey Littleton fan, too. Corey Littleton, undrafted guy, comes into the Rams, works his way up, ascends to being one of the league's best coverage linebackers, a tackle monster. He's got 9 pass deflections last year, 13 the year before. He gets tackles for loss, 9 and 18, 6 last year. Now, this is interesting. 4 sacks and 18, 3.5 last year. Those are just keep racking up the points. 5 interceptions over the last 2 years. Corey Littleton, the Rams, I don't really get why they didn't try to keep him around at least a little bit. The Raiders got their linebacker situation, in my opinion, figured out with Corey Littleton and bringing in Nick Kwiatkowski. Do I think that he does exactly what he did last year or close to it? I really do. I think he gets close. I don't, different coaching staff, maybe things are a little different, but from what I've seen of Corey Littleton, he's a guy that he gets it done. And he's low key just been getting it done. And I'm not fading him, even though he did switch teams. What are your thoughts, Mike, on he and Kwiatkowski, another guy who I really think is going to perform this year, who's a little bit cheaper? And with them transitioning to a new team, this kind of new look Raiders, young new look Raiders defense with these two guys in the middle. What are your thoughts, Mike? And then Jared, what are your thoughts on the move? We've talked about him before, but let's hit on him real quick, and then let's get to Jonathan Abram.
So you guys are both Corey Littleton guys, correct?
I mean, I've got him in one league. I like him. I wish I had him in more. So, I mean, I guess, yeah, he's a top 10 guy for me pretty easily.
So I hope I make things up. I still am on Corey Littleton, even with the move. I have him as my 7th linebacker in redraft this year. So I think even with Kwiatkowski in tow, I think this might be a situation where you could even have where you can draft both guys and you could almost potentially start both guys, because I think those are going to be the 3 down guys in Oakland or in Las Vegas. So both are.
Tell us, Jared, what do you got?
25 tackles 1 year, 134 the next, 90 solos, 80 solos, 4 fumble recoveries last year. He's a big play waiting to happen. And honestly, he never got any love until he went there. The crazy thing is Las Vegas got him for cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at it, I thought he was going to get $15 million.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me a ton of Joe Schober. Mm-hmm. If you look at the tape, they look very familiar. In the clip we just showed, that reminds me a lot of Joe Schober. He did that for years. I mean, was it a couple years ago we had Denver
won the Super Bowl?
It was Denver, Oakland, and Kansas City were all right there in the. It came down to the last game and who's going to win the division. So you had 12 and 13 game winners, and even a 9-6 with Denver that year. That was a tough year, man. They continue to play very well, but this year. Now I think it's the Chargers as much as anybody. So I love this division overall. I think you have really, really solid IDP. Obviously, we talked an hour and a half on this. So, and we can go all day just because it's how it is. It's a really, really good group.
Yeah, solid division. I'm with you. I think Nick Kwiatkowski is a guy that when you watched him play last year. The end of season numbers aren't there, but if you extrapolate what he did as a starter out across the full season, I mean, he was a baller. I mean, he was getting sacks. He was getting pass deflections. We just showed a clip of him getting a safety. I mean, he can diagnose the plays very well, and it just comes down to those things where he just had bigger names in front of him, guys who were getting paid in front of him. And when he got his shot, he shone bright as very bright, and now he's got a shot to go to a team that just moved to Vegas, that's an ascending kind of team in general, and the eyes are going to be on them. So there's not like the expectations are high necessarily, but people are going to be watching this Raiders team closely, and that makes me happy for a guy like Nick Kwiatkowski, who I think is going to have a very good year. Let's finish this out. Let's talk shortly about Jonathan Abram. Only appeared one game last year, got hurt pretty early on, playing free safety for the Raiders. I have him in my rankings. I'm trying to find him right now. I'm just going to put it this way because I can't find him exactly. I'm not as high on him as a lot of people. I want to see him actually play a full game in the NFL. I want to see him do something besides make a tackle. I want to see what he can really pull off. I'm looking right now at my redraft rankings. I have him at 14. And even as I'm saying that, I feel like that's too high for a guy who hasn't proven anything. But quickly, if any of my Dynasty Nerds guys are listening, I'm looking at our consensus rankings right now. And somebody's got Jonathan Abram way too high because he's in our consensus top 5 right now, ahead of guys like John Johnson and Jabril Peppers and Taylor Rapp. So if you're listening out there, whoever you are, drop him down just a hair for me. But what do you guys think about the upside of this guy, especially with, last year, one of the things we liked about him coming in was there was nobody in front of him. Now you've got 2 guys in front of him who we just talked about, that are very, very capable linebackers. Does that hurt his ceiling? We'll start with Mike, go to you, Jared, and then we'll bring Steve in and we'll close this down. We appreciate everybody for hanging with us. So,
Yeah, I think I've got Abram right around 11. Again, might be a little too high, but I like those, I guess, boomer bust injury guys. So like two safeties I'm targeting, and I'm either gonna live or die with these two guys is Keanu Neal and Abram. So I think if you're risk averse, I think those are two guys you might want to avoid. But I think you could probably target him as a DB2, but yeah, now it's the guys that are in front of him. Yeah, he didn't, who'd you have a linebacker last year in Oakland? You had Tahir Whitehead. I think you had Brandon Marshall, and I think you had Vontaze Perfect for a little bit. So, yeah, it was not a good group last year. I still like his abilities. I think he can be a big hitter, but it's the back end, the secondary is a lot to be desired. I mean, the front seven has really improved, but it's just the back end. And when you talk to Marius Randall, who really became an attitude problem in Cleveland last year, I don't know. The secondary outside of Abram is not really one I'm getting excited about.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Jared?
Okay, so I said in my rookie 4-1 last year, the reason he concerned me is because when he comes down to hit, he does not lay off, and that's exactly what took him out of the season.
Yep.
And there's probably, I'll be honest, if you want a games that I really want him in, it's against Kansas City, because I'm going to torch them and going to have to make plays. Knowing, maybe in the Denver game, but in the Chargers game, dude, the Chargers are going to dink and dunk and try to, run the clock, I think, a little more than people think with Eckler and what they have, on their team, unless Herbert decides to start throwing that cannon, because that dude has a howitzer attached to him. So I am not on Jonathan Abram because I'm worried about his aspect. And you're sold on Keanu Neal. I'm sorry. Somebody who's been injured 2 years in a row, season-ending injuries, it's not a thing for me.
No, I know.
Abram
he's not going to be for everyone.
That's not a concern for me. I mean, that's not a concern for me with Abram. I think that he lays off a little bit, and I think he plays his game like he's supposed to play, but I don't have him in my top 10 at all.
Yeah, fair. All right, well, we've just crested an hour and 32 minutes. Let's bring in our man, Steve. Steve, we good to bring you on? Doing it.
What's up?
What's up? So, how'd we do? Any notes or anything like that we missed on, or comments?
Nope, everything was good. I just want to know what you guys would sell Maxx Crosby for.
Ooh, sell Maxx Crosby for. I mean, whatever I could get for him, probably. But I don't have him on any rosters, if I'm being completely honest. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that.
Like, you have a target or something?
I haven't been
a target range.
Let's hear it, Mike. You're wanting to sell him high. What are you looking for?
No, I mean,
if
you can get an upgrade, obviously at an offensive position, if you're weak, I mean, could you? I don't know. Honestly, I don't have a target, but I mean, if you can get a really good upgrade at an offensive position,
let's say Curtis Samuel.
If you're good at defensive line, like if you're stacked at defensive line and you were able to get some, if you got Maxx Crosby as like your fourth or fifth defensive lineman, and you're stacked at the position, use him to upgrade maybe an offensive position. That's just me.
All right, let's just do some fun, just quick 1-for-1 trades, and I'll just give Mike and then Jared yes or no. Would you trade Maxx Crosby for Curtis Samuel?
No.
No. What about you, Jared? No.
No. Not even thought about it.
All right. What about Maxx Crosby for Dallas Goedert?
Tight end premium?
Sure.
If it's tight end premium, I would say
potentially.
All
that'd
right.
be tough.
I would definitely talk about it. Yeah, if it's a tight end premium, yes.
All right. Let's do one more. Would you trade Maxx Crosby for Deebo Samuel right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
No.
No.
Ooh.
All right. Well, there you have it. Some yeses, some nos. We had a good discussion today, guys. Mike, we really appreciate you coming on. It was an awesome show. I really enjoyed your perspectives. I thought we all had some good banter. I love when we have disagreeing opinions on players. I love that shit. That's like my favorite thing about fantasy.
You know what's kind of
Too.
if I'm making a comparison, I think the reaction to my opinion on Maxx Crosby, Jared, if you've seen Office Space, I'm assuming you've seen Office Space.
Yeah.
Okay. The scene where Lumberg is in with the Bobs, and the Bobs told Lumberg, we want him as a manager. And when Lumberg goes, oh, you know, I don't think so. And the reaction where they're just like, the Bob's reaction to them saying he's not manager material. I think that's kind of what you were the Bobs there. Like,
excellent.
I know for our YouTube channel, if Steve can find it, I know my face is like this. So I'm sure that if he can find it, that's going to be our clip. Because I'm like,
make that your profile pic.
I was in awe. Like, yeah, I probably will because, dude,
Peter Gibbs is not manager material.
Low on him.
Yeah,
I can understand selling high, but to be that low on him, it's a world to me.
Yeah. Well, let's give him the shout out. We got follow Mike at Mike_Woelertt. He's got a good IDP fantasy football podcast. If you guys want to check that out, mic'd up. Follow me at 50 Shades of Drunk. Jordan Rains. Jared is at Jared Gray. Steve, our producer, our indispensable, our incredible guy behind the scenes, at the Dynasty Chef. You can also follow us on the Instagram, which we don't put a lot of stuff on there, but we are interactive on there a little bit. And yeah, we will be back next week, guys. This is the end of the AFC preview shows. We will be jumping into the NFC next week. We will have on another guest who we will announce later this week. And IDP Army, we love you. We appreciate you, Mike. We appreciate you too. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And yeah, I'll hand it over to Jared. Send us off, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always. If you want an IDP Army shirt, let us know. We'll hook you up for a price. Let's go.